Welcome to another episode of Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. This is the show that highlights the importance of estate planning and why everyone needs to do it, and of course, the unfortunate consequences of what happens far too often if people have not planned. Again, I'm your host, John Braddock, author of the Amazon bestseller, Click Here When I Die, and the founder of the My Life and Wishes Legacy Vault, an online planning and document storage solution created to make things easier for those you love. So welcome, everyone. Today, we have another exciting episode for you. I am thrilled to introduce to you my friend, Ilya Lyubimskiy. Ilya is the founder and managing attorney of Premier Legacy Law. Ilya is also extremely knowledgeable and experienced in estate planning, wills and trusts, probate and trust administration, and business formation planning. He takes pride in helping his clients to navigate the complexities of estate planning with expert guidance and compassion. He enjoys getting to know each client and is committed to providing the highest level of service as he prepares plans which are tailored to his clients' very unique and specific needs. He is also passionate about empowering people with the knowledge and resources that they need to make informed legacy planning and estate administration decisions. He regularly educates both members of the public and other professionals on various legal topics within the planning, legacy planning, and estate administration realms. Ilya graduated from the University of Denver Stern College of Law, where he distinguished himself as the editor for the Criminal Law Review. Additionally, he holds certificates in legal research from the University of Denver, Westminster Law Library, and he brings added value to his clients as a licensed certified public accountant in the state of Colorado and as a certified fraud examiner with the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. But beyond his business and legal pursuits, Ilya cherishes time that he spends with his wife, Vanya, and the two dogs, Dexter and Sammy. He's an avid Colorado sports fan, enjoys hiking and embracing the beauty of the Colorado outdoors. Welcome, Ilya.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and hello to everybody out there listening in or watching. This is great. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You know, I love engaging with attorneys all across the country and talking through different stories of estate planning and things. But I always start with one question, and much like auto brands, there are about that many areas of legal practice, right? From criminal law to bankruptcy to corporate. And so, tell me about your passion. Why estate planning?
So my passion is estate planning is because I wanted to empower people. I've seen some things formerly as a prosecutor where people didn't have plans in place, they got taken advantage of, and as a prosecutor in the economic crimes unit, I was able to see that firsthand. I wanted to step out and get in front of the issue, right? I wanted to educate people now about the importance of estate planning because so many people put it off and they think this is a luxury item. We don't have to worry about this. But the reality is it's important. It's one of the most important gifts we can give ourselves and to our family members because it takes care of you now, during incapacity, and after death. A lot of people see estate planning as just, hey, I'm setting up a will because I want to designate where my things are going to go after I pass. But that's a part of estate planning. There's a half of estate planning there that people tend to look over. And that's where I want to educate them and empower them to put in a plan that's going to protect them, right? Because estate planning is about powers of attorney as well. It's about medical directives. And when folks don't have these in place, when they've fallen on hard times, they become incapacitated, God forbid, or they lose loved ones in their life that were otherwise named in these plans, and they could be taken advantage of by people. And I never want that to happen to any of my clients. So the best feeling for me, John, is when clients sit down with me at the end of the estate planning process to sign the documents. There's just a huge sigh of relief on them. And they go, wow, I shouldn't have been putting this off as long as I did. But, thank you for walking me through the process. It's never as hard as they seem to assume it is coming into the process. So I always encourage people, hey, we're going to get through this together. I'm going to make it as easy as possible just to, understand what estate planning is about, what documents they can put in place to help them, and then they feel empowered in the end because they have a plan that's going to protect them, and they know they have a trusted advisor they can go to if they need help down the road. So that's really my why.
Absolutely. That's awesome. A lot of people might not understand it until they actually have an estate plan done. But it is the ultimate peace of mind, knowing that my final desires will be honored, knowing there's someone to speak for me when I can't speak for myself in the form of an incapacity through advanced directives and those kind of things. And just knowing that I'm not leaving that burden to family to fight over, because as you and I both know all too well, families fight, while we're here and alive.
Right.
They fight worse after, if there's not a well laid out plan.
Inject some grief into that, and then things get even worse. Although it's not uncommon, and John, you probably heard this too. Sometimes people will approach it and say, you know what, my family's pretty reasonable. They're going to figure it out. And I always go, famous last words. Hold on a second before we just, write it all off. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, and it's funny, and you look at so many people and you wonder why they don't have it. And very briefly, and this will be probably a separate podcast episode that I'll do, but I lost a family member a week ago, and so thank you. Someone that was close through the years, but the last several years been a bit strange. Had no advanced directives in place. And he was in a scenario in the hospital where very hard decisions had to be made. And his wife wasn't really sure, what to do, wanted the advice. And so got involved and made those decisions. And it would have been so much easier for her had she known and discussed with her husband and had a plan laid out that says, hey, if this is the situation,
right,
do not take any extreme measures to keep me alive. And so it was one of the hardest decisions she ever had to make without the person whom she always made those decisions with.
Right.
And no one should have to go through that. So there's an estate planning nightmare for you. But since we call the show Estate Planning Nightmare, I always find the best way to get people thinking about their own planning is through real stories, and not necessarily to scare them, maybe a little, but to get them to understand the realities, right, of what may happen without planning. And I know you and I have talked, you've got a lot of stories, but could you share something with us?
Yeah, absolutely, John. One story in particular comes to mind where a client came to me and she needed help with what she thought initially was a trust administration because she, handed me a trust to look at. And the more I dived into the topic and tried to figure out what was going on, what did her father leave, what was in his estate, I learned much to my chagrin, and then my client's chagrin, is that he set up the trust himself. Now,
a DIY trust.
That's right. I mean, I've heard it more often with a will, but here was a DIY trust where he said he did a pour over will. So he found, apparently he found documents online and was able to copy them and change some words inside the trust and the will to set these up. But then he had them signed, and they were, the documents were notarized and official, and that's what my client at the time thought was legitimate, and it was going to be handling this estate for. The downside is he didn't he didn't really know. He did some research, and he found that the need for the trust and need for this pour over will, but he didn't know that all the legal provisions that were in this will and trust, because there were provisions in this trust, and this is a Colorado resident that's lived in Colorado for many, many years, that owned all Colorado property, really set up a California trust. And it said California law must be followed. So, I saw that and I said, we got a real problem here. We're going to walk you through it, but this isn't something where we can just assume that wasn't in the trust. We can't just ignore parts of the trust that we don't like. So I had to walk this client through a couple of different things, because another misstep. I know the gentleman he wished to do good for his family and help them out, but by taking the shortcut and not actually funding the trust fully, he made, one of what I call one of the cardinal sins of estate planning is, if you set up a trust, you gotta put stuff in it. It's only as good as what assets are in it. And this trust was not fully funded. So what ended up happening is we had to open a probate case initially, and that turned into another offshoot nightmare, is because he named a different person, somebody from this was a blended family. He had 3 children, and there were 2 children his wife had from a previous relationship. He named one of those 2 kids as the executor, what's called personal representative in Colorado, to be in charge of the will. Yet he named my client to be in charge of the trust. So we had a clash, unfortunately, where that side of the family didn't fully trust my client or her side of the family. So it created a whole nightmare there just to get going. And so we had to, unfortunately, it dragged things out, as you can imagine, way too long. My client was, just beside herself, going, well, why is this taking so long? Why do we have to, go through this? And I said, I'm sorry, we can't just pick and choose the parts of the trust and the will we can follow. We would have to have agreement of everybody, or we have to go to, hearings and try to get court approval just to get through the process. By the end of it, believe me, John, client has had it up to here. She's just like, I can't do this anymore. We're about a year and a half in at that point, and thankfully I was able to grease some wheels and get it going, because the other side had an attorney that was making things a little bit more difficult. But it was all, it came from the greatest of intentions of the father to set this all up, but it turned into such a nightmare, unfortunately, for my client. I don't wish this on anybody, frankly.
So the only thing worse than a do-it-yourself will would be a do-it-yourself trust.
Right.
So
That would be
Papa had all the good intentions, wants to do right by everyone, save $1 in the process, set up a trust on his own, and governed by California law.
He's fine in California, right?
Right. Trust supposed to avoid probate, but doesn't when it's incorrect. Probably pushing 2 years, I suspect, in probate. All the family infighting that goes along with it, and properly done, it might have cost Papa $3,000 to have it all set up right, and the family minimally spent 5 to 10 times more than that resolving everything.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's safe to say. And, that all came out of dad's estate. Um,
Wow.
his goal was to save them money and time and trouble and, with the best of intentions, which was most people do this with the best of intentions. But I kind of liken this, John, to if somebody comes up and asks you, hey, what should I do? I'm trying to sell my house. What do you think most people would likely tell that person?
Go talk to a realtor.
Right. I mean, hey, everybody knows a realtor, or you could say go find a realtor that can help you because that's what they do. They're in the business of selling houses. They're the professionals. They know the ins and outs. And even though that person could save themselves 3% or maybe more of the sales price by doing it themselves and, putting up a for sale by owner sign and just kind of figuring out the whole ordeal themselves. It's more important to them than just trying to wing it. So most people that I know would act, with that same advice, John. Absolutely. Hey, I'm going to get a realtor because they know what they're doing. Um,
Because I don't know anything about title insurance or
right.
you know.
I don't know what do I need for the contract. I don't know title insurance. How do I, guarantee that I'm going to get paid, right? All these big considerations that a good realtor can walk you through. But ironically, people don't necessarily have that same thought process when they're thinking of estate planning. They're going, well, you know what? I could probably figure this out. It's just a combination of documents, right? And then we just let everything else go out the door, all the worries.
Yeah. It's you know, and people probably get tired of hearing me say this, but I say it all the time. And it's, what do you want the experience to be like for your family after you're gone? And if you can start building your own life foundation around that in every aspect,
Hmm.
then you can you can be at peace, good peace of mind, and know that your family is not going to be stuck in a scenario much like you just described with this one particular family.
Right. And as you and I well know, setting up a plan and putting a family member in charge, it's a big responsibility for them. So, if you want somebody to, follow through, the intention would be that, hey, I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible for you. Although
Yeah.
sometimes clients will say, hell, they'll figure it out. You know what? And then I go, well, hold on. People when they're grieving someone's loss, or they're going through a difficult time, that's not the time where we're going to set them up to make huge decisions that are you're going to affect them. They're going to affect their families. So I always go, hey, our goal is to try to put these decisions, as many of them as possible, in writing to make it easier for the loved ones, right? Because, like you said, ultimately, this is the best gift we can leave them, with that peace of mind.
Oh, exactly. I mean, even simple things too, even beyond that. So, this gentleman I know quite well and talk about him in my book, um, had said to me, I really wished I had known mom wanted to be cremated before I buried her.
Hmm.
And sad, but true story. He didn't find out till quite some time later, going through mom's things. But you don't have time to go through all mom or dad's things before you have to make decisions of, what to do with the deceased.
Right.
And you know, it's simple conversations like that. It's making sure you have, the trust or the will or things in place to lighten the load on family when they're arguably dealing with the most horrible experience they've ever dealt with.
Absolutely. And I bet he would have also benefited from having, my life and wishes set up. If mom had that, it wouldn't be such an ordeal digging through all the paperwork trying to figure out, am I doing right by her? Am I going to get blamed by the other half of the family who, says, mom told me she want to be cremated,
Right.
right? Without a document, how, sometimes these things don't get resolved. And then you get, even over a decision like that, I've seen families, tear apart and fissure, and they never talk to each other because so and so, did the wrong thing, made the
Oh,
wrong decision.
exactly. And I appreciate you mentioning that. Yeah, the legacy vault is designed for that purpose. I mean, is it a place where um, family uh, can have access to when the time comes to everything from my final wishes to the location of documents to property that's owned and website logins, and take down my Facebook account so you don't have to have that pop up tell you to wish me a happy birthday every year. Yeah,
Right.
for
Mhm.
forever. And yeah, it's you know, the thing is, people always think they have time. It's like, I have time, I'll get around to it.
Mhm.
Well, you know what? I don't own that crystal ball. I hope I have a long time left, right?
Absolutely.
Um, but we just don't know. Which why it makes sense to plan today, get your affairs in order,
Mhm.
talk to a professional estate planning attorney like Ilya. Um, and the beauty of it is, this is going to cost a couple of bucks. Yeah, you know what it is, but it's going to save the family a lot at the end of the day. And with a true professional's experience, I mean, I can sit with you and tell you, well, here's what I think I'd like to do after, where things should go. But you've dealt with these with so many people and so many courtrooms, and
Mhm.
you can say, all right, but have you thought about this or that? What about when the kids reach a certain age? And the list goes on, and you
Mhm.
can provide that guidance so that I can build a really good plan and then still be involved with me through the years moving forward, because things change, right?
Mhm.
It's not a
Absolutely.
set it and forget it.
Right. And I see it as my job to, push back and say, hey, did you consider this? Hey, if a lot of times I'll have clients that are elderly that maybe have children that have moved out of state, and they want to name their children in order. This is the go-to. Oldest first, they get the most responsibility. Oh, and I ask, well, for medical decision making, where's your oldest live? And then they go, New York State. And then I have to push back and I say, well, let's consider what that's going to look like. Somebody from New York can call a doctor and talk to them, but unless they move here or move you out there, this something's got to give, right? So maybe that's not the go-to person for medical decision making. Maybe that's the great go-to person for financial decision making. So I feel like part of my job, and what part of my job that I love is being able to, have that conversation with people and be able to push back and say, is this going to work? Or are we just, naming our kids in sequential order, right? To be in charge of everything, when we all know, maybe they're not the best at this, and maybe they should do something else, right? We
Yeah,
don't just name them to have a plan. The plan has to make sense.
yeah, absolutely. And the oldest isn't necessarily the smartest. you know
Right. Or
you know
the
they
best with finances, maybe, right?
right. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I heard one attorney tell me at one point, he said, when making a decision on who's going to be the executor of your affairs, who should you pick? And he said, the child you like the least, because it's the hardest job.
Right. Right. It's sometimes it does feel like that to clients who are like, how did I get this responsibility? Yikes. Right.
Right. Oh, wow. Well, that's interesting. Say, as we're winding down on our time, I always like to say, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience, or is there a question that I didn't ask that maybe you wished I had?
Well, I mean, all I can tell people is, hey, don't put it off. Best advice I can give is this isn't something that, we plan, at the end of life when we've had the luxury of not having anything, a rainy day happen to us. The best time to plan is now. It sounds cliche, but that's the advice I'm going to give to people is if you're thinking about it and you're saying, you know what, I'm going to wait and hold off, there's always an excuse we can come up with and say, you know what, we got other things, but this is really important and people should prioritize it.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Um, and so for all of our listeners everywhere, and particularly those in the great state of Colorado, how can our listeners reach you if they have questions, need help with estate planning matters?
Absolutely. So my firm is in the Denver Tech Center. People can call me at 303-409-7770, or I'll even leave my email address if people wanted to reach me. It is ILYA, my first name, at premierlegacylaw.com.
Perfect.
Um,
Perfect.
my website is www.premierlegacylaw.com. And I encourage anybody in Colorado or anybody out there just wanted to learn a little bit about estate planning, maybe, basics of estate planning or wills versus trust. I am running complimentary 1 hour Zooms or, in-person classes. So I want to get that information out there to people.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
That really is. I mean, an hour of an expert's time for free to find things out. I would definitely take advantage of that. So, Ilya, I can't thank you enough for being on our show. It's been insightful as always, and along with our listeners, truly grateful for your time. And a huge shout out to all of our listeners out there. Thank you for joining us and sticking with us. Please feel free to reach out to Ilya. I have included all of his contact information that he mentioned in the show notes. So you can get his phone number, his website. You can follow him on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. So please reach out to him. And as always, my friends, plan ahead and make it a great day.